Coming up in today's episode.
Children were being taught that the goal in life is to be a martyr. It was these messages by the Palestinian Authority that created Hamas. It's not just Hamas that has been involved in terror. It's the Palestinian Authority police that have been actively involved in terror.
Gaza must be ruled by a rejuvenated Palestinian Authority. It sounds like they can go for a spa day and suddenly they're going to be suitable and not advocating terrorism.
Welcome to Peace Talk, a podcast about Israel
and the Middle East.
I'm Jonathan Sachradotti, a Jewish journalist here in London.
And I am Moataz Mizu, Egyptian journalist based in London.
Today we're joined by Itamar Marcus, the founder and director of Palestinian Media Watch, who's visiting the UK to address parliamentarians. Itamar, welcome to Peace Talk, and thanks very much for talking with us. We really appreciate it on your trip here. Firstly, let's talk about just a little bit of background about what Palestinian Media Watch is. Can you give us a sort of potted history?
Palestinian Media Watch was founded in 1996, a few years after the signing of the Oslo Accords. We wanted to know what was happening in the Palestinian world amongst themselves. We started reading their newspapers. We studied immediately their school books. We started following their television, especially children's programs. We wanted to know if what the messages were, the internal messages. We knew they were telling the international community in English that they wanted to have peace with Israel. We wanted to see the Arabic language message world. And what we found is that there were two different worlds. To their own people, Israel had no right to exist. The Jews were the enemies of Allah, destined for destruction. And this was consistent. And children were being taught that the goal in life is to be a martyr. And this was right from the beginning. We saw this literally in like kindergarten-like programming on Palestinian TV. This has been so successful that all of these years, I mean, we have followed as this evolved and followed. I mean, the last year alone, we've had, I can't tell you how many young kids, how many children under 17 who were on terrorist attacks, many of them writing farewell letters where we understood by the letters that their goal was not even to kill, but their goal was to be killed. There was a video that Fatah put on their Facebook page 2 years ago, which I think summarized the tragedy of Fatah and PA education to children. It showed a poem recited by a young girl who described how a little boy, a mother gave a rifle to a young boy as a present. And then the boy says, "Why are you giving me a rifle?" And the mother says, "Because you're not destined for happiness. You're destined for martyrdom. Our weapon is Islam. And you, my son, and you, my child, are the ammunition." And this Fatah put on their Facebook page. And this girl is with all this passion. And then we saw this year the results. We have children writing letters. 14-year-old boy wrote a letter. He said, "Parents, when you get this letter, don't cry over me. Be joyous over my blood. Make sounds of joy, my mother. My father, don't cry. I asked for martyrdom, and Allah granted it to me." What was incredible, this 14-year-old boy who wrote this letter, when his funeral was shown on TV, on official Palestinian Authority TV, as you saw him being carried through the streets in the open coffins, you see it was no coffin, you see his face there on the stretcher, Palestinian Authority played a song, and the song had the words, "Oh mother, give me roses, this is the most beautiful time." 14-year-old's death is the... So this was the education we at Palestinian Media Watch have been warning about for years. And the result is that this year, we had dozens and dozens and dozens of teenage kids going out to join terror attacks with the goal of being the next one to be the great honored martyr because they're so convinced that this is a wonderful thing to do.
And this isn't just in Gaza. This is the West.
I'm describing the West Bank. I'm describing everything I've said to you. This is the West Bank. As far as following Palestinian Authority education over the years, it was these messages by the Palestinian Authority that created Hamas. Children were brought up on these messages all these years, When they reach 16, 17, 18, they say, Hamas is doing it. The PA is talking about it. The PA is teaching it. This is what I've learned. Of course, I'm going to join Hamas and go out in the terror attack. What we see from the new report that we've just released is that it's not just Hamas that has been involved in terror. It's not only Fatah that's been involved in terror. It's the Palestinian Authority police that have been actively involved in terror. One of the lead item that we did in our report was just from 2 weeks ago, January 17th, 5 terrorists were on the way to a terror attack, were killed by Israel. The lead one, Abu Jalal, I think was his name. The Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigades published a poster with the 5 pictures, and they put next to his name, captain in the Palestinian Authority security services, intelligence, and then they also put commander in the Al-Aqsa Martyr Brigades. And then Israel announced, right after he was killed, that he was one of the leaders of organizing terror in all of the West Bank. So you've got a captain in the Palestinian Authority police. Now, in addition to that example, in our report, we documented a poster that Fatah published they called it the heroes of the Palestinian, the martyrs of the Palestinian Authority police. And we checked out the names of every single one. 23 of them were terrorists.
Some say that you criticize Fatah, okay, and that Fatah follows. And you see that it's a Fatah problem system or is it Islam system. So, because it's not only Fatah, also in Hamas and also in Jihad.
I absolutely, what you're saying, that the problem is connected to their interpretation of Islam. And let me just explain how clear that is. 2 weeks after October 7th, when it became the Friday, time for the Friday sermons.
Yes.
The Palestinian Authority Ministry of Religion on Thursday always publishes talking points. And 2 weeks after October 7th, they told Palestinians that in all the mosques it should be taught the Hadith, the hour of resurrection won't come until Muslims fight the Jews and kill them. But what's so significant, Jews will hide behind rocks and trees, and Muslims are going to kill the Jews hiding behind rocks and trees.
I am here after behind the trees and they kill me. Yes.
And that's what happened 2 weeks before. They were hiding behind rocks and trees, and they were killed, and that's what this Hadith said. So
they learned us when I was in kindergarten, in KG, in Egypt.
And actually, this brings me back to something that I've said for ages, which is when people say things, we want to believe them. And so for many years, if I've read people that, I'm not a Quranic scholar, but I've read people that very phrase, because we're all familiar with it, because it's about killing us. And they were, it's rhetoric, it's extreme. But as you said, they just did it.
They did it, and what the PA was telling them is what happened on October 7th. Don't think it was just Palestinian nationalism. It was fulfillment of Islam. That was why they published this 2 weeks later. They were telling them, don't think of that as nationalism. That is Islam.
By the way, Gabriel Joub says that in his interview with the Palestinian TV.
Yeah.
And he says that it's a victory to us, not to Hamas.
Yes.
You remember that? And I think you're right.
Jibril Rajoub said many things about this. Jibril Rajoub, top Palestinian leader, he said it was an epic event. It was heroic. This is Itamar Marcus, who is a top Palestinian leader.
Can I ask, because I think that what's happened during this war in the wider world, especially in the media and in Western politics, is a sudden realization that maybe they've been wrong, and maybe the things they thought were extreme on the Israeli side are not extreme. And it's a very slow realization, probably too slow. So we're discussing now a lot whether UNRWA is part of the problem. Of course, people like you have known as part of the problem for a very long time. Are we yet at the stage where they're going to listen to your message that the Palestinian Authority and that Fatah are part of the problem?
Well, the first thing I'm so pleased about is that the Israeli government seems to have accepted that message. For the first time, they've said loud and clear that we're not going to allow Hamas, the Gaza Strip, to be run by the Palestinian Authority. Like I said, the Palestinian Authority inadvertently created the power of Hamas.
Right.
If you put them back into we'll have another Hamas in 10 years, because it's the education. It's not just it's the messages. It's the worldview. It's the worldview of seeing Jews as people who can be killed. Let me just give you an example that's significant for Britain. Last year, in April, 3 British citizens were killed in Israel in a drive-by shooting. Lucy D. and her 2 children, Mia and Rina. A month later, the Israeli army tracked down the terrorists who did it, the 2 terrorists and an accomplice, and 3 of them were killed. That day that they were killed, Mohammed Shtaya put on his Facebook page the pictures of the terrorists, and what did he put on top of it? Honor and glory to our heroic, to our eternal martyrs. Honor him. This is what the Prime Minister says about a murder. The Palestinian Authority Prime Minister says about the murder
of 3
of 3 British citizens. Yes.
Never mind Jews. At least the Brits can care that they were Brits.
Yes.
Women.
But and women, and I'll tell you, and Abbas is no better. Earlier last year, 2 terrorists, Karim Yunus and his cousin, they had together murdered an Israeli 40 years ago, and they were released from prison early because of a deal. They were supposed to have life sentences. Shimon Peres waited 40 years. They got released from prison. The day they were released from prison, who calls them up? Mahmoud Abbas calls them up, makes sure that it's filmed, and then they put it on the Facebook page where he says to them, "You are the heroes of the Palestinian people. You are the icons of the Palestinian people. You are the models for the Palestinians." So you've got Mahmoud Abbas saying that 2 murderers are icons and models for Palestinians. You've got Mohammed Shtaya saying that the murderers of 3 British women are heroes and are martyrs. By the way, when you say that they're shaheeds, this is critical when you talk about Islam. You're saying that Allah is putting his stamp of approval on that murder. That's what it's saying. Because you cannot be a shaheed. It's not a secular concept of martyrdom. It's a religious concept. It means you died for Allah. It means that what you did, Allah has chosen as something positive. The fact that the Palestinian Authority has called every single suicide bomber since the year 2000 and every person who was killed in a terror attack against Israel shaheeds means they are saying that Allah puts his stamp of approval on every single killing of every single Israeli. And that's what has to be understood. You cannot claim that the PA is moderate when they're telling the people that Allah wants all these Jews killed.
I think that you are one of the little professor in the world, which tells the world take care about the anti-Semitism, and you attack USA in some tweets about the anti-Semitism in some countries, in states, and even in Europe. So as a father and as a professor, how do you see the anti-Semitism in Europe, for example? London in Saturday become Londonistan.
I think what we're seeing is the most successful export of the Palestinian Authority is anti-Semitism. Because the anti-Semites going through the streets of Britain and the streets of New York and the streets of Europe, they're all copying the words of the Palestinian Authority. The Palestinian Authority has said Israel is a colonialist implant with no right to exist. And they're saying those same words. Literally, it's the same words that we have been warning about for years, has been adopted as the narrative. And it's not just in the streets, it's tragically been adopted in academia as well, around the world. And that's why it's so worrisome, because we're not talking about fringe. We're talking about people who are mainstream. We're talking about people who have positions of power and influence. We saw it from the 3 heads of universities who were in the United States.
Harvard.
Yes, including. Who weren't willing to say that calling for genocide of Jews is hate speech.
So how has that become their most successful export? How on earth have we got to that position?
It's because the Palestinians have successfully presented themselves as victims of Israel's existence, and the internet, and when we would go around to the world, I'd come to British Parliament, American Congress, and listen, they're telling the people that Israel has no right to exist. Oh, doesn't matter, it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter. It'll go away as long as you have peace. It doesn't go away. I was once one of the Palestinians who we work with, and there were Palestinians who we work with who was meeting with members of a European Parliament in Israel, and I made my presentation, and he spoke about his life and how he grew up hating Israelis, fearing Israelis, because he was convinced every Israeli wanted to kill him. And then an Israeli approached him, and finally he had his wow moment, and he said, "Oh my God!" He realized that the Israelis who he was meeting cared more about him than the Palestinian Authority, who was had poisoned him into thinking. So one of the members of Parliament asked him, "Well, maybe it'll get better with the Palestinian Authority if you have a state." And his answer to them was, No, please don't do that to us. Don't make these leaders, don't give them a state, because I could never live in that state. I'd have to leave. We need something else completely. What do we need? They said, we need something connected to Israel, because they're the ones who care about us. This was a Palestinian, still now a resident at a refugee camp.
I read some of your articles, and I read some of your amazing work. Every word you write, you have a picture. Every word you write, you have a tweet.
And
every word, Facebook. Personal questions. You didn't afraid from them Palestinian.
Jibril Raju on TV, we exposed a lot of his terror. We put in a complaint to FIFA, and FIFA suspended him for a year because of us. And he went on TV, and he had to explain why. So he said, "I'm telling you that this organization, Palestinian Media Watch, they chase me everywhere I go." And we were putting in complaints. We tried to keep him out of Britain. We sent complaints and we did it with the MPs. We were working then with Joan Ryan. She gave in a complaint to the government to not allow him into the country. We did it in everywhere he was trying to go. And then finally FIFA kicked him out for a year. So he said, there's this organization, Palestinian Media Watch, they chase me everywhere, and their director is Goebbels of the 21st century. And I'm proving a point.
When it comes to the UNRWA debate, I think that everyone knew it already in the West. They just pretended not to. And now Israel's forced their hand. Isn't it the case also with the Palestinian Authority that everybody knows what you're saying is true, partly because of your fine work?
They attack you?
Right. Really? So why is it that, we have to, why, for example, I keep hearing this phrase, the Gaza must be ruled by a rejuvenated Palestinian Authority. It sounds like they can go for a spa day and suddenly they're going to be suitable and not advocating terrorism. Why are they in denial?
Okay, first of all, one of the tragic things about this rejuvenated PA, I've read that they need a new prime minister, a new minister of finance, a new structure, more transparency. And I'm saying, you're missing the whole point. They have to stop paying salaries to terrorists, stop rewarding terrorists. In other words, it's not just structure, it's essence that's the problem. And the Western leaders who are talking about a new structure don't understand what they're talking about.
And what about, why isn't your voice, for example, on the BBC? Why aren't we hearing all of
I've been on BBC years ago. I mean, the truth is, I would be very happy, and I should probably make more of an effort to get onto BBC more often now, because, again, and the Western channels, I've been in
BBC Arabic. What you said?
I'll tell you, I've been interviewed since the war started between 1 and 5 times a day sometimes on different channels around the world.
Western channels?
Yeah, Western channels as well. So there is tremendous interest right now. And because, like you said, people are realizing that what we've been saying is really, really happening. And I'm hopefully, this is tragic events for everyone. It was tragic for Israel and tragic for the Palestinians in Gaza. I'm hoping that out of this tragedy, maybe something positive can be built if Gaza has Israeli security control. They rebuild it without one refugee camp, put everybody in a home and say, you are free from being a prisoner of refugees. You are a free person now. Build them jobs, build them housing, and have the Abraham Accord countries together with UK, US, EU, create the entire social educational framework for the first 10 years. Maybe that can be a model even for the West Bank, because because everything was flattened, we're starting from scratch. And when you're starting from scratch, you can do it right if you do it as I described.
Absolutely. Well, let's hope so. And let's hope that the world starts to listen to your messages, because it's very clear, very important, very pressing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you to you, Dr. Ansu. You were amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The luck is out. Thank you so much.